You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of the Underground Subway. I want to thank you for joining this podcast that is dedicated to one thing. It is dedicated to giving you the tools, the strategies, the concepts, the ideas, using our experiences of life to help you to live a better and more liberated life. What do we mean by liberated life? What does that mean to be free? It means to live a life without chains or restrictions, to be able to live, focus, think, act, and move without anything holding us back. And my friends, I don't know about you, but life has come at us fast, and we've all had difficult days in our past. We've all had sleepless nights. We've all had times in which we felt like throwing in the towel. But you survived this long. You survived just so that you can hop on this train, the Underground Subway. My grandmother's first cousin was the great Harriet Tubman, and Harriet said something when all was said and done. She said, I could have helped so many more slaves if only they knew that they were not free. How many of us have things holding us back and we don't even realize that there are some chains and restrictions in our lives? This podcast is dedicated to revealing those chains as well as giving us the strategy on how to be free. Thank you for joining us. Let's put this train on the road and let's get moving with the Underground Subway. I'm excited because I always have good guests, but this particular podcast, I had to get a guest that's qualified and heavily armed and dangerous with information and knowledge to share with us so that we can live a better life. That's all I want to do is give you quality and qualified guests. And we've got one for this edition of the Underground Subway. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest. The Dwight Heck Financial was founded by Dwight Heck, who started his career while living paycheck to paycheck as a single dad of 5 children. Like many of us, Dwight didn't understand how money worked or the basics of budgeting. Money came in and immediately disappeared, followed by sleepless nights and stress filled with quiet desperation. Instead of asking for help, Dwight kept his financial troubles to himself and avoided embarrassment and judgment. Tired of feeling like he was stumbling through life with no direction, Dwight made up his mind to live with intention and purpose. A turning point came for Dwight in 2001 when he discovered some major health issues. They led to a crossroads of giving up the emotionally, mentally, and physically draining IT consulting world. After working 9 hard, relentless, thankless years as an IT consultant, a friend reached out to Dwight in 2002 and asked if he was interested in checking out the finance and insurance industry. He encouraged Dwight to use his remarkable people skills, retaliability, and ability to teach and train to others in financial distress. I like that. That's what we need to talk about. Help me welcome to the Underground Subway, Dwight Heck. Dwight, thank you for taking time out of your busy and hectic schedule to board this train to help us out, my friend.
No problem, David. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Dwight, let's get right into it. Let's talk about it. I'm an individual that when I go to the gym to work out, I don't mind lifting weights. I don't mind using the machines. I don't mind I'll box a little bit. I'll jump rope. One thing I don't want to do, I guess it's a mental thing, is hop on a treadmill. And the reason I don't want to hop on the treadmill is because I feel like if I'm going to run somewhere or walk somewhere, I want to go somewhere. The treadmill reminds me of something called a hamster wheel, in which you're on it. That hamster is on it, just going around and around and around and around and around. I want to talk to you about the hamster wheel of life and tell us, in your opinion, what does living on a hamster wheel actually mean when it comes to our daily lifestyle?
Well, most people, we grow up and we see the patterns of our parents and, family around us. They go to work, go home and get paid. They come home, they live for the weekends and, excuse me, they don't really live a life that's on purpose. They basically follow the same patterns as their parents, and then they teach it to their own kids, and they really have no direction or goals to what they want. They know that they want to, eventually retire, and hopefully they have enough money to, live a comfortable life. Unfortunately, they've never had anybody help them plan or put goals in place and be able to achieve what they want, because they really don't know what they want. They live a pattern that was instilled to them again by their surroundings, their associations from their young childhood all the way to adulthood. And the next thing you know, they've spent 40 years working, and the next thing you know, they've got 40%, if they're lucky, of their income to try to survive for however many years they're going to live. So they go with their working lives living on that hamster wheel to living a life where they're watching the paint peel on the walls because they can't afford to go out and do all the things they dreamt about doing in retirement, because they were never, again, given the tools to understand the rules of the money game, to understand that if they bring in a dollar and they're spending $1.20, they're never going to get ahead. They don't
Hmm.
understand that they need to save first. If they make $1, they should save 20 cents and learn how to budget and live on that 80 cents so that they do have something by the time they retire, and they're not stuck on that proverbial hamster wheel or treadmill like you were mentioning.
Hmm. You know, one of my guests on the Underground Subway I spoke to mentioned that there was a point in his life when he was a multimillionaire. And when he looked up and noticed how life had turned for him, he was flat broke and sleeping on his mother's sofa. And I asked him the question because most people would say, if I had $1 million right now, I'd be set for life. Or if I ever hit the lottery and won $10 million, it's over. I'll never have to do anything. Number one, Dwight, is that true? Or can you fathom being a multimillionaire one moment and being broke on sleeping on your mom's sofa the next?
That's very true. There's many countless cases in the world today, and including my friends, that I have many multimillionaire friends that are very, very wealthy, and they have people within their circle over a 5, 10 year, 20-year period of time that were very wealthy, but never ever again understood the rules of the money game. So they were spending it as fast as they'd make it. The next thing they know, it was gone, because they were never ever taught the simple principles of understanding the inflows and outflows of money. So it is actually, it's more prevalent than people realize. There's many, many people out there. I know people personally that were extremely wealthy and now are dead or dead broke by the
Wow.
time life has gotten to a point where they realize they were making mistakes. It's too late, and they never had anybody. So here's the difference between somebody that's, let's say, poor, making 15, 20,000 a year, versus somebody that's making 6, 7 figures a year. The person making 6, 7 figures is able to buy bigger things. They're at a higher level of broke, though, because they will go out and buy things, not necessarily paying cash for it and owning it outright. They take what they make and they have their payments based around that. Just like somebody that's making 20,000 a year, they might get a raise or they might make more money, and they'll go out, oh, I'm making an extra $100 a month. What can I buy? They put it on their credit card because they know now they can make $100 payment, or they'll go buy whatever and have a payment structure put in place. So the company will say, well, it's $100 for this a month. Oh, great. I just got a raise. So now they're always staying broke. They're never getting
Hmm.
ahead. Instead of saying, oh, I'm making $100 more, now I can actually, save for retirement, maybe pay off some debt, do some debt consolidation. The problem is, if they don't understand the simple rules of the money game, which is involving budgeting, they're broke. And the wealthy do the same thing. I've seen it time and time again. All of a sudden, it might not even be the fact that they're wealthy because of a business. Maybe they've gotten an inheritance or they've won a lottery, and nobody's ever taught them how to spend money wisely, to control money wisely, and they'll go out and they blow it all. They just they go out and they buy all these materialistic toys. All of a sudden they gain new friends they never knew they had. They had family come back into their life that wasn't ever there because they have something and they don't know how to say no. Their newfound cash and their newfound notoriety or celebrity has made them so that they don't want to lose that. So, they'll give money away, or charities will be knocking on the door, but they don't have anybody that's actually a money finance planner that's saying, hey, this is great that you have this money. How about we put this all aside? This is what you can spend. This is what you live off. And, this is the way life should be. Unfortunately, they're never taught that. So they win money, they have a lottery, they blow it all. Person that's poor never ever learns the rules in the money game. So they live in quiet desperation and debt all the time because they don't understand that they should save, or they don't know how to get out of debt. They know that the credit card companies and corporations are going to give them easy loans or easy credit. So they take it and they spend it. They get a little bit paid off, they spend it again. Right. And the wealthy do that too. The wealthy overspend all the time. So they don't even know, just because they became wealthy in their business or their career doesn't mean they ever learn the proper principles of how to control and live with money, because
Right.
money does not have a personality. Money takes on the personality of the person that wields it and the knowledge that they have within their 6 inches between their ears, in their mindset.
Dwight, I want to make a statement. If you can expound on this, if you agree. If you don't agree, please, by all means, say, "Well, David, I disagree." Uh, in this case, do you think that the poor has a little better money skills than the wealthy in this scenario? I'm poor. I've only got about $25 to my name. That's all I've got. I go to the store and I'll look at something and I'll say, you know what? I only have $25. I can't afford this $10 shirt. I need to save this. Whereas the wealthy never considers what the cost is. It's just spend, spend, spend. Uh,
Well, in my experience, the poor don't necessarily spend money or deal with money any better than that wealthy person that can just afford to buy that $10 shirt and not think about the long-term consequences of buying it. The poor person, it all depends where they're at in their lives. What patterns were they taught? Did they see their folks, if they had $25 and they know they needed some milk, some bread, and some eggs and a couple things, they got to pay some bills? Did they see their folks do, like, keep that money, or pick up that $10 shirt and that stuff they needed? All of a sudden now they can't buy the eggs. They're just buying a
mhm.
loaf of bread and some milk, or they can't afford any of it. But the person's got a shirt because their parent is sad and they're depressive buying, and buying that $10 shirt makes them happy.
Mhm.
Yet their responsibilities to ensure their family is fed and taken care of and that bills are paid is trumped by the need for them to have that temporary feel good, right? By
Mhm.
buying that shirt. So they don't necessarily, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the
Okay.
fact that they're better with money than somebody that has a ton of money. They're just, their patterns of behavior are the same, whether they're wealthy or they're poor. They need
Right.
to understand and structure the fact of, what do I spend every month? What do I bring in? Oh my goodness, what is a need and a want? That's the number one thing that the
Right.
poor and the
Exactly.
wealthy need to learn, is the difference. What is an actual need? That shirt isn't a need. Food, though, is a
It's a
need.
need. Right.
Paying your rent is the need, right?
Mhm. Right. But do we, when I say we, I'm just referring to people in general, do we look at buying the shirt? You mentioned a feel good. Do we look at buying the shirt to make us feel so good, or make us feel as though we do have more than what we have? So now I heard a minister at church one time say that most people would rather look blessed than be blessed.
Yeah, people like to live a facade. They like to see, and I've been telling people this, and when I coach and when I go stand on stages and talk, you know, here's my client. Here's a typical client. You look at the front of their house, you look at the facade, and it looks really nice. They've got flowers, they've got everything looking good. But if you open up the door to their house and step in, You'd be shocked how many have old furniture, no furniture. The house is in disarray, it needs work, but we don't see that. It's that way as well for people's mental mindset. They put up a facade, they have a nice shirt on, they look good, they temporarily feel good, or they give the impression to you that they feel good. But if you were to open up the door to their mind and could climb in and actually see what's going on, there's clutter, there's disarray. So there's so many people that live at, by a facade today, that it is actually quite scary. And you bring up the fact, yes, that shirt will make them feel good, maybe it look good, but it doesn't mean their life is great, right? So I've learned over the last 20 years to actually be a student of human nature, learn to read body language, learn to listen and understand their tonality, and look for the signs, and help them peel back the layers of the onion to come to the truth and the reality that their life isn't great, and then help them uplift and get to a point where they can live a life on purpose and not go to bed every single night in quiet desperation. And I'm talking from experience. I'm not better than anybody that's listening to this. I lived many, many years in quiet desperation as a single dad raising 5 kids, and had those points in time where I was afraid to log on to my bank account for fear of a zero balance or being in overdraft, and fear of answering the phone because I had creditors coming after me. So I speak from experience. I've been there. I've been that person that presented a facade and that I had it all, when in reality, behind my facade, I was in disarray and things weren't good. And I was going to bed every night, sad, crying in quiet desperation, getting up in the morning, putting a facade on, putting a mask on so my kids wouldn't see that, and wondering how I was going to make it through the day, how I was going to pay that bill, how, robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they would say.
Wow. Dwight, I'm from Philadelphia originally and currently in North Carolina, but in Philadelphia, Philadelphia is a sports station town. And as a sports town, there's a sports station that comes on 24 hours, and there's a host on the one of the sports stations. I guess he wouldn't mind if I mention his name. His name is Howard Eskin, and Howard is one of the legends in Philadelphia sports talk radio. And Howard says something whenever someone calls his show, and I want you to expound on it. Howard says someone will call and say, "Hey, Howard, nice, joining you." And Howard would say, "Hey, David, how are you?" And fine, how are you, Howard? And Howard would say, and I quote, "I've never had a bad day in my life. I've only had bad moments."
Yeah, I say that all the time. Actually, I coach about that. I actually coach people on how to live a life where you say you never have bad days, because I was one of those people that would say, 'cause think about this, David, a typical person could have a fantastic day. Let's say it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Something tragic happens, and they all of a sudden, the rest of the day, when anybody says, "Well, how was your day?" "Oh, I'm having a bad day." And I was one of those people years ago, and I got to a point where I tell myself I never have bad days, and I have specific things that I do to get myself out of those funks, and tell myself I'm only having a bad moment. Now, what do I need to do to get out of that bad moment? Do I got to look at what happened in, 15, 20 minutes, an hour before that? Is it associations? Am I listening to people, or am I reading something, or am I on social media? Am I following a specific type of thing that is enhancing my mood, making my situation or circumstance terrible? And I have to analyze that, and I need to time myself out. I know people laugh, time out. Yeah, as kids, we don't like being timed out, but as an adult, I love it. If I have some circumstances and I'm working on things and I need to go plop myself down on the couch and have my dog beside me and just close my eyes and think, maybe have a power nap, wake up more refreshed, and then analyze, why did I have that bad moment? Get to the root of it. And then the next time I might not have that bad moment when the same circumstance happens, because now I've analyzed it, I've figured it out. Maybe I've stopped listening to a certain, again, type of podcast, or reading a certain type of or listening to a certain type of book, or maybe it's music even. Like,
Mhm.
what do people do when they're in a bad mood? They watch TV shows that accentuate their mood or their current state of mind. They'll hang around with people that are necessarily not going to uplift them, but they'll go, "Oh, you poor person, boo hoo, yeah, you should feel terrible." And all they do is they add more fuel to the fire. So our associations are so key as well. But I totally agree. I don't think that that person you were talking about, that sportscaster, I 100% agree. That is the best way, because positive self talk, by him saying that out loud, he's also programming his brain and he's helping that person that's listening question, what does he mean? Maybe they'll ask him about it. Maybe they won't. But he's doing his due diligence to himself. He's being honorable to himself, to his core value that there's no such thing as a bad day, only bad moments.
I'm mesmerized because I'm listening, and as of this podcast, I am officially adopting that mentality, and that's going to be my new tagline. I'm going to say it and say it and say it. I've never had a bad day in my life, just bad moments, because moments don't last. Listen, you said something. You said something that really triggered my thought. You used the word associations. How important is it for our inner circle to be like-minded, and what is there a difference between associations or the people that my buddies that I hang around, or my family members?
Well, associations are so key. One of the things I do a lot of coaching on is, specifically everybody automatically, just like yourself, and I did at one time too, think associations are just people. It's not just people. It's back to what I was just commenting on. What are you watching? What do
Right.
you watch when you're trying to relax? Are you watching, if you can watch a drama show or a TV show or a movie and you understand it's entertainment, that's great. But a majority of the population climbs into that show or that movie or the music they're listening to or the book they're reading. They're not reading things that are, or listening or watching things that are uplifting. Well, it's the same with the people they hang out with. They hang out with people that have broke mindset or broke mentality, back to what we talked about a few moments ago. They live for the weekends, Monday to Friday, go to work, go home, get paid. And then on the weekends, they're hanging out with people that are living for that weekend. They have addictions, right? And they climb into that addiction with them, maybe. And then again, I'm not against people that drink, in a social setting, or, do things within moderation. But the problem is if you associate with people that live for the weekend to get drunk every weekend, and you are doing the same thing, well, what is alcohol? Alcohol is a depressant. How is
Yes.
that helping a person's state of mind? So our associations of who we hang out with is so key. Again, not just hanging out with people, our associations with what we listen to, what we read. Are you reading books that are science fiction? Not to say that science fiction books can't be entertaining, but why don't you pick up a book that's a self-help book that might help you level up your mindset, like How to Win
Exactly.
Friends and Influence People, or the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, or The Magic of Thinking Big. So many different books out there that could help uplift us. But what do people do? They take the easy route.
Right.
They pick up a book like Stephen King. No offense to Stephen King, but what is it? How is that going to uplift your life? So read 5 good books and then we read one Stephen King. But then
Right.
understand that's entertainment.
Right.
What do most people do though? They never pick up a good book to that's going to uplift them. They never watch good TV shows. And if they do, they're living within a whole, because they're around the water cooler and they're talking about. I used to hear that all the time, especially when I was out consulting in the IT industry, and they'd be around the water cooler talking about the show that was on the night before. Did you hear what Sally did? Did you hear what Bill
Yes.
did? Can you imagine they cheated on each other? Blah blah blah. Blah. Like that's not reality, people, right? So that
Yes.
association is so important to escape. And if you're hanging around people that are like that, limit your associations to them. And people say, well, that's impossible. They're my family. No, it's not. I do it all the time. You have a set time that you're meeting family. 4 o'clock, you're meeting them for supper or dinner, whatever country you're in. At 3:30, I show up. I visit a little bit. Meal comes on at 4 o'clock. We're done by 5:30. I'm gone. I stay a little bit longer to be, polite, but I limit my interactions with those that are negative in their mindset and negative in the associations of what they have in their life. Because if not, I'm just going to get drugged down to where they're at. And that's their choice to be there, but it's my choice to always be on the climb, to always be uplifting for myself. Because if I can't be that way, if I can't always be climbing and lifting up, how can I serve others effectively?
That's
God
right.
wants me to be a servant of others, but in order to be a servant of others, I've got to be blessed in my own heart and my mindset. And in order to do that, I got to watch what I associate with, from people all the way to, like I said, books, podcasts, movies, TV shows, groups I hang out with. Even in church, even my church, there's groups that I avoid because they're negative.
Right. I was laughing as you were saying this because I was just telling my daughter the same thing. I heard her talking to her sisters, to my other daughters, and they were discussing something. And I really started to feel bad about the situation until I realized they were talking about a TV show. And so we get caught up into it. There's one part of your bio that I didn't read, Dwight, that I want to get into in the little time we have left. It talks about that you have this thing where you say that you only work with the willing. What does that mean?
Well, for an example, let's say the first years of my practice, of my financial practice, I'd have people, I was desperate because I was trying to, I'm commission based, I'm trying to close business, I'm trying to put food on the table, I'm trying to make sure I can pay the mortgage and rent and whatever the case may be. And I'd sit down with people that were so far in debt, and I teach them, I goal set with them. They'd give me a little bit of false information, or they would say, "Oh yeah, 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 I'm gonna do whatever you tell me to do, Dwight. We're gonna listen to what you are telling us to do in our lifestyle and in our finances." I teach them how to budget. I teach them how to do debt consolidation. All of this for free, right? I teach them that because eventually, the end result, if there was some business, I'd close some business with them with a product or service, and I get paid a commission from the company that that I'd utilize. Problem is if they claim they're willing, but they weren't really willing. So I had to develop skills to understand and ask the proper questions, and develop processes along the way with goal setting and implementation of a budget. And I'd have to literally watch to see if they were lying to themselves. Thus, they were unintentionally lying to me too, if that makes sense. So we
Yes.
get them out of debt, and 30, 60, 90 days later, maybe 6 months later, they're right back where they're at, right? And they call me up and say, "This is where we're at." And I'd say to them, "Well, you know what? Unfortunately, you have gotten yourself in a position because you lied to yourself, you lied to me indirectly. You weren't you weren't willing to do whatever it takes to not fall back into that same trap." So over the years, I have specific things I communicate and talk to people. And then I have very selective who I take on as clients, because if I don't, guess what they are? They're an association to that negative type of person you
Right.
talked about,
Exactly.
and they're pulling me down, and that's not fair to myself. Because if I'm not keeping myself healthy, again, in mind, body, and spirit, how am I being a servant to my kids, to my family, to my clients, to those that are around me that look to me to be a leader, a positive person? So I have developed things that where I only take on the wielding. Is it 100% accurate? No. Sometimes it's not, but more times it's not. More times than not, part of me, it's very accurate. And I don't work with the non willing. If they're not willing to go through and sacrifice and go through some of that pain and hardship and strife, because is it easy? Absolutely not. It's not easy for people to have to admit they've been overspending. It's not easy for people to admit that they don't understand the rules of the money game. It's not easy for people to sit down with a goal sheet with me and start breaking down, using the W principle of what they want, why do they want it, when do they want it by. It's not easy for people because they don't learn that in school. They don't
Exactly.
learn it from their parents. They don't learn it because most of the people, including the people they grew up in school with or outside of school in college and university, are already on the starting stages of being on the hamster wheel of life. and just going
Yes.
to work, go home, get paid Monday to Friday, living for the weekends, waiting for that 2 weeks of vacation a year.
Wow. Do you think, Dwight, that most people that don't, that spend their entire life without having something, when they finally, I guess you could say, hit it big to where they have something, that they're so used to not having something where they turn around and say, well, now I'm going to splurge and just spend, 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 spend. Isn't that a problem?
Oh, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem in the world today, especially with the centurions the last of them passing away, passing money on to the baby boomers who are starting to pass away themselves, and they're passing money down to the X generation and then the millennials. There's no planning involved. They've never had money, so all of a sudden they get a big chunk of money, and instead of sitting down with somebody such as myself that will help them understand they should put X amount aside for their retirement, they should get rid of their debt, they go out and they buy toys, they go out and they become very materialistic, or they'll donate money in large chunks, and they've never understood you know that they got to put their family and them first. Not that
Right.
charities aren't good, because I donate to charity when I could, but only before I took care of my needs, my family's needs first. So, it happens all the time. Big chunks of money come in. Like, I had a client here, let's say 10 clients will reach out to me. One of them will each of them will get $500,000. We use as an example. One of them will reach out to me and say, "Hey, what should I do with this 500,000?" The other nine, I'll never hear from them in this, or they'll give me 10. They'll give me 10. They'll reach out and say, "Oh, I got an inheritance." They don't tell me the amount. I'll find out after they've gotten themselves in trouble, and then they want me to help them figure out how to get out of it. And they've maybe given me, let's say, 100,000. Well, all of a sudden, hey, we need to take that 100,000 back out of our investments. Why? Well, we got ourselves in financial strife, or we got the creditors after us because they've gone out based on that payment principle and bought a bunch of toys. Now all of a
Wow.
sudden they don't even have the money to make the payments, and the creditors are coming after them for the difference. So now all of a
Wow.
sudden they have to cash in their $100,000 that they did give me, or 10,000, or whatever the dollar amount is, just to keep the creditors at bay. It's
Wow.
it's a it's a huge prevalent problem, and it's going to get even worse as we go through the last 10 years of what they call the baby boomer wave, which started in 2012, and it's expected by 2032 a mass majority of the baby boomers, the first 10 years of the baby boomers based on life expectancy, are going to be gone, right?
Wow.
So we have a huge problem on our hands because their children have been pattern taught by them.
Yes.
They
Big
still
problem.
so they don't understand, and it's just going to keep on propagating. And it all starts by the fact that our education system in North America, around the world in general, needs to stop teaching some of the useless things they teach, and teach people life skills, teach them goal
Exactly.
setting, teach them financial skills, teach them to understand their their inner workings. Why do they have anxiety? Why do they have depression? What can they do to get past it? You know, Teach them stuff about not having a bad day, because you used to hear that in school. They talk about teachers, "Oh, I'm having a bad day," or they'll hear a friend because they come from their home to the school, "I'm having a bad day," when their whole day was good. They had one bad moment, right? So there's things
Right.
like that that we need to teach our youth, so that we break that chain, so it propagates in a good way down the generations, and we eventually break the chain of that broke mentality that our society has propagated over the decades.
I agree with you. I asked that question myself. Why aren't we teaching in schools what investment, what it is, what it consists of, and things like that? My friend, there's an old saying that says time flies when you're having fun, and we are definitely having fun, and we've run out of time. But I'm going to tell you one thing, my friend. You have enlightened me. You've inspired me. You've encouraged me, and I'm sure you've done that for our listeners as well. In the couple minutes we have left, tell us how someone can get in touch with you if we want to sit down with you and talk about some things involving our spending habits, etc., finding our purpose.
Now, the best way to get a hold of me is just to go to my website at giveaheck.com. So GIVEA Heck, HECK.com. Go to giveaheck.com. You'll see there's podcast. It's a podcast, a portal that was designed. You can access my podcast. You can access and find out about my best-selling book. You can actually go up and hit the book. You can book a meeting with me, a no-cost introductory call with me, where we'll jump on a Zoom call. Obviously, if it's somebody that listens to your show that lives local to me, depending on where they live, we can get together. But yeah, they can have a no cost, no obligation call with me, and we can discuss where they're at in their lives. I coach people. I've had calls with people from Australia, from the UK, from the US, from Canada. The list goes on. So, we can see how I can help, and depending on what it is that they need assistance with, we can set up some sort of process to help them understand the rules of the money game, so they can finally live life on purpose, not by accident.
Thank you, my friend. I will say again, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. You are, in my opinion, a Hall of Famer. You are a treasure to humanity. We need more people like you in this world, and I take my hat off to you. Again, thank you so much for joining us. To the podcast listeners, to those that are listening to the Underground Subway, I hear the music playing, and it is time for this train to pull into the station, and it is your stop coming up. We are now approaching Success Avenue, Purpose Boulevard. Hop off and do something with your life. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Dwight Heck, who really inspired and motivated us in a special way for this edition of the Underground Subway. In parting, before you go, before you hop off the train, before I open the doors and let you off, I want to challenge you tonight, before you go to bed, find a mirror, look yourself in the eyes, just stare at yourself, eyeball to eyeball, and ask yourself one simple question. Today, did I do something to work toward my purpose in life, or did I simply waste another day? Think about that. You don't have any time to waste. Have a great rest of the day and an even better tomorrow. We'll see you next time right here on the Underground Subway.